So welcome everybody and good morning and welcome to Congregational Assessments organized by the Synod of the Northeast. My name is Kim Deal and on behalf of the Synod, I will be the organizer for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. By default, you are listening to this webinar using your computer speaker system. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Next slide, please. You will be muted during today's presentation. Please make every effort to reduce outside sounds that could be distracting for others on the call if there is a time on the call when you are not muted. Let's see, this presentation will be recorded and it will be available on the Synod's YouTube channel later this week. Next slide. Please submit questions to Shannon by typing your questions into the questions panel of your control panel. You may send questions in at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the question and answer time at the end of this webinar. I would now like to introduce Shannon, who will moderate today's meeting. Thank you.
So welcome everyone. My name is Shannan Vance-Ocampo. I serve as the Transitional Presbyter for Albany Presbytery, which is in New York State in the Synod of the Northeast. And today's webinar is a follow-up to a retreat that was held at the end of April, or beginning of May actually, of this year by the Northern New York Committee on Ministry Network of the Synod of the Northeast. This was scheduled originally to be a workshop during the retreat, but we had some challenges at the retreat with our main keynoter having a family emergency, and so we had to reshuffle the retreat the day before, and this workshop was one of the casualties of that. So we felt that it was very important and we wanted to make sure that we still provided this information for our network and also shared it as we were able. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the network as we get started. This is a network of the Synod of the Northeast. Our Synod has been encouraging for a few years the creation of networks, and our networks in the Synod are aspirationally based and based around common needs and ideas. So we have networks that are resource-based, like this one, which is to resource committees on ministries in different presbyteries in the upstate New York region. We also have networks that are more activist or ministry-oriented, such as our Prison Ministry Network or our Environmental Creation Care Network, our Sanctuary and Immigration Network. We also have a network on coaching, a network on mediation, and a network for our newbie worshiping community. So we have a number of networks throughout the Synod. This network was created about 2 years ago. Right now it encompasses 6 presbyteries, but it is open to any presbytery within the Synod which would like to join it. It was started by the presbyteries of Albany, Cayuga-Syracuse, Geneva, Northern New York, Susquehanna Valley, and Utica. We've been in existence for about 2 years, and during that time we have hosted 2 retreats, which we have invited anyone serving on our committees on ministries or attached to our committees on ministries to attend. These have been high-level training retreats so that we can learn together, engage in workshops, and we also have folks from the National Church, such as the Board of Pensions, which interact with Committee on Ministry work, join us at these retreats. We also share across presbyteries now our resources. So, for example, Utica Presbytery makes excellent use of commissioned ruling elders and has a pretty robust training in place for their commissioned ruling elders. So they're really the specialists in that within our network and have a program which is highly specialized. And the blessing of the network then is that we don't have to reinvent that wheel in other presbyteries. We can share that knowledge and share that resourcing from folks in Utica. Albany, the presbytery I serve, has a highly developed entry into ministry mentoring program. And so that is something that we have invited and shared with our neighbors as well. So this is the idea, is that we share our resources cross presbytery And over this next year, one of the goals for the network is to begin rolling out some additional webinars. And this is the first of those webinars. And again, our goal is this cross-presbytery pollination of best practices, resources, and training. And at the end of the webinar, I will be giving you contact information for our network. We have a Facebook group, and we also have a network page on the Synod website. And we also maintain a very active Google Drive where we put lots of resources, handbooks, and other things for each other. This network has really been a blessing for these 6 presbyteries, and it's a model that we hope to take on to other presbyteries, and we hope to lead in other areas of life and ministry of our Synod through. So the webinar today is about congregational assessments, and there are many tools out there and many ways to assess the ministry of congregations, assess a ministry's viability and sustainability, assess a congregation's readiness for ministry, and to also assess what is going on in the community around that congregation. As we know, many of our congregations today struggle because the landscape of ministry is changing so rapidly. Sometimes we feel like we are a mismatch for the community that is around us, which has changed, or we want to find ways to be new and allow the community around us, which is changing, to impact the life of the ministry within the walls of the congregation and to find new ways to live into what God is calling us to do and to be. So there's many, many reasons why you would want to engage in assessments, and there's many reasons why assessments would be helpful to congregations. I say that one of the most important reasons why we do assessments is because ministry today for many congregations and many ministry leaders feels muddled or feels foggy. And that is because we are living through the time of a new reformation in the life of our church. This is a time, in my opinion, of great excitement and great possibility, but it also means that we are doing a little bit of walking in the dark. And so assessments help us to gain more clarity, to gain more light, and to gain more insight into where the Spirit is taking us and where we are being called to follow Jesus Christ in prophetic and transformational ministry for the healing of brokenness in our communities and in our world, and for the transformation of our communities. So that is the reason why we might want to engage in assessments. Assessments are also, I want to say at the front end, not one size fits all. There are many different kinds of assessments. We're going to highlight a few in this webinar. There are many others. These are the ones most commonly being used within our synod currently, but there are many other assessments out there and many other ways of seeing. Also, at the tail end of an assessment, many times what that means is that there needs to be additional work done, and that is when additional resources can be brought on board. The other reason to engage in assessments is for goal setting and also for strategic planning. One of the growing reasons to do assessments is that many congregations are in a time of transition or an interim, and assessments can be very helpful right at the beginning of an interim to help gain clarity and to set goals so that that very important 2 to 3 year period of an interim is used to the best of the ability of both the interim pastor and the congregation. Assessments can also be used by governing bodies, by presbyteries, to make decisions about funds administration. Some presbyteries use them. You do assessments in order to apply for grants or in order to qualify for certain grants. It can also be used to be learning and, again, an opportunity to listen to where God's Spirit might be taking us. So what we're going to do today is run through a few of these ways of doing assessments, and I'm going to talk about each one, talk about the process of how this assessment works, and give information about next steps. So New Beginnings. New Beginnings is widely known throughout the Synod. New Beginnings for many years was a program of the Office of Evangelism and Church Growth of the Presbyterian Mission Agency of our National Church Office, and this was being used throughout the Synod. About a year and a half ago, the denomination discontinued the use of this product, not because the product is deficient in any way, but this was a funding decision by the Presbyterian Mission Agency to close portions of the Church Growth and Evangelism Office as part of the cost-saving measures which are taken about every year to 2 years in Louisville. So this has no bearing on New Beginnings and no bearing on the viability or efficacy of this assessment process. This was not a Presbyterian-developed assessment. This was actually developed by our partners in the Formula of Agreement, the Disciples of Christ, and they continue to provide this assessment to congregations. One of our newest networks in the Synod is the Network on New Beginnings, because we have a number of people trained within the Synod to be New Beginnings coaches, and we have some presbyteries and congregations that were partway through the New Beginnings process when it was discontinued by the denomination. So we want to continue to be able to resource, and this is a Synod-wide network. This is beyond even just the Northern New York network. The goal of New Beginnings is to gain clarity about the interplay of facility space and missional identity of the congregation, and it also has a component that looks at financial health for congregations. And as I said, our Synod has recently begun starting a New Beginnings network and is looking to continue this process in congregations in our bounds. This network will probably run a few test runs before the end of 2017 and then begin with some more organization in 2018. But this is something you don't have to go through the Synod network to achieve. You can also go directly to New Beginnings. So the process for a New Beginnings assessment, obviously the beginning of every one of these processes is the decision to engage in a process. So that's something for every congregation to do on their own speed and on their own terms to figure out, do we want to engage in some form of assessment, which one fits us, choosing one and choosing your leadership team. With New Beginnings, you can engage individually as one congregation or as a cluster. Previously in our Synod, these were done in presbytery clusters, and we would have a training day, which was called a come and see event, where many congregations would be invited, receive information, ask questions, get to know other congregations that were looking to engage in New Beginnings, and then make decisions on their own. And then the resourcing would happen in community through neighbors and presbyteries. There is a trained assessor, a New Beginnings coach, that comes from another region to come alongside your congregation during the New Beginnings process. So you may have someone in your region, in your presbytery, who is trained as a New Beginnings coach. It's typically not advisable to be a New Beginnings coach for congregations that you have a relationship with or may have a relationship with in the future, or that are close neighbors or ministry partners of yours. So someone from outside comes in to come alongside. And there are 5 steps. There is some pre-work that happens where some information is inputted for New Beginnings so they know something about your congregation before they arrive. And then there is a on-site assessment. This is really one of the big pieces of it. This is when the New Beginnings coach arrives at your site. There is an extensive look at your church facilities, finances, and also a tour of the community and conversations with ministry leaders. And this provides a lot of the data and a lot of the input that the New Beginnings coach will create in your report. The report is then generated, and your leadership is trained in your congregation to receive and to interpret the report and to work with others, including your coach, to develop a future story. Now, if you have other congregations in your region which are doing this, which helps with cost, they can be trained. The leadership teams from various congregations can be trained together. Then after you receive the report and have had time to digest it, Your leadership team has been trained, and a few future stories, scenarios are laid out. Then this group of leaders who have been trained lead small groups over a period of weeks consistently in guided conversations about these future stories and guided discernment. And then the leaders come back together, and then once a future story decision is made, New Beginnings or your presbytery can assist with next steps. And next steps can take many forms. They can take the form of additional resourcing or coaching, being linked to a team of other congregations like yours, which are in a similar spot, to looking at leadership issues. That can take many, many forms. This is the website for New Beginnings, where you can get more information. They have a webinar on their website that you can watch to get more information. And this also will, for your governing body, give clarity about the resources, the coaching, and the training which is needed when the congregation makes a decision about their future story and what goals they need to achieve it. Can also give clarity about funding, clusters for coaching or individualized coaching that a leader of a congregation may be needing. The next assessment tool is called the CAT, the Congregational Assessment Tool. This is developed by Holy Cow Consulting, which was founded by Russ Crabtree, who was trained and served as a Presbyterian Church USA pastor. The goal of the CAT is to use organizational intelligence and benchmarked data to help the congregation gain clarity about itself through many, many lenses, and just a few of them are listed here. The lenses of energy, flexibility, governance, theology, satisfaction, hospitality, spiritual vitality, conflict, and there are additional lenses as well. This is being used by some congregations in our synod and also by some of the presbyteries in our synod. They also have an instrument to help a regional governing body, a presbytery, do the same thing for itself, a presbytery-wide assessment. Right now it is most heavily being used in Albany Presbytery and in Utica Presbytery. The interesting thing about the CAT is that when you receive your report on the data which individual congregants say about themselves, the questions that they answer, is that it is benchmarked against everything else in the Holy Cow database. So you then receive your data, and then you also receive your data benchmarked against over 30,000 other mainline congregations which are in the Holy Cow database. And there are also some additional, when you take the CAT, there is the standard questions that everyone gets, and then there are some additional modules that you can add at no cost. There's a module for strategic planning, there's a module for transitions, there's a module for stewardship, there's a module for interim. So we've had congregations in our presbytery use different modules at different times. We have one congregation that is within about a year and a half of a long-term pastorate, and that congregation decided to do the CAT before that pastor departs to gain some clarity about themselves and to really set very tight goals for the last 18 to 22 months of his pastorate. And we also have many congregations doing it during their interim time. The process for the CAT, again, is that you decide to engage the process. The leadership body will be in charge of the CAT along with your pastor. And there is about a month ahead of time before the CAT is taken of internal marketing to help the congregation know about the process and to prime them for taking the instrument. And so there are materials that Holy Cow will give you, and these are things you can use in your e-news blasts or your newsletter, your bulletin, things like this. Then the instrument is administered usually over a 3-week period. It's an online instrument. It takes about an hour to take. And there is also a PDF so that if individuals in your congregation are not able to use a computer or not comfortable, they can fill it out by hand and then someone in the church office can enter those in online. Within about 48 hours after the poll closes online, the report is generated, and it comes in multiple parts. It comes in one large part, which is your vital signs report, which is about 30 pages long, about your congregation and about all of the data and what it says to you and what it says for future viability and for goals and things that you need to set into the future. And there is also places where you can ask some individualized questions that go into the poll, and those will also generate some reports. There is an interpretation, which is done by a trained interpreter. Interpreters are trained by Holy Cow, and this is given either to your leadership body, whether that be a vision team or your session or some other type of a configuration team, or to the entire congregation. And that's usually when a congregation is small, that it's done for the entire congregation. The interpretation lasts 3 hours. It takes a lot of time to dig through the data and to talk through what it is. So usually this is scheduled as a workshop afternoon after church on a Sunday, usually with a meal to break up the time. And then out of that interpretation, next steps and goals are identified and determined, and there may be some follow-up coaching that is recommended for the pastoral leadership, and resources are brought on board afterwards. Here's information about the products from Holy Cow, and this also for the governing body can give clarity about resources, coaching, training that is needed based on the report. It is extremely useful at the beginning of interims for goal setting and to see where congregations are. And the real difference with the CAT versus other assessments is that the CAT is very data-driven, and so it takes, if you went around and did a survey in your congregation or a poll or conversation groups, many people will say what you want them to hear in those settings, but because of the privacy level of the CAT, people taking it in their at their individual computer, people are a lot more honest, and many times the results are quite surprising and help give a much more honest view of where the congregation needs to move. There is also a book that goes along with the CAT, and that goes out to leaders of congregations when they take it so that they have additional resourcing. The next instrument is very different than the first two. This instrument is called Mission Insight, and that's not a typo, that's how it's spelled. Mission Insight is a blend of demographic and social information about the community around the congregation. So where New Beginnings and Holy Cow are more internally focused, Mission Insight is a much shorter piece, and it's something that can be very effectively used in tandem with New Beginnings and also with the CAT. Mission Insight takes advantage of all sorts of data that is out there about us, consumer data, all the data that gets collected about all of us all the time online, many times without our consent and without our knowing. There are whole companies that specialize in data. We see this in presidential elections where you get to that micro data level that pollsters talk about, where they know what makes each person in each house tick and what they're looking for in a political candidate, and how to message towards them. Data, consumer data, what are buying habits in communities, and also a great deal of use of U.S. Census data, both the 10-year trends and the yearly trends that come out of the census. So this is socioeconomic, behavioral, lifestyle, educational, intelligence data about the community that surrounds the congregation. And this also puts out 5 to 10-year trends of where communities are going, and it benchmarks out, I think, about 30, maybe even 40 different micro subsets of different types of people and different types of mindsets and what different groups are looking for. So, for example, if you have a young family, maybe in their early 30s, what a young family that's not one size fits all. Young family in their 30s with both parents with master's degrees who do a lot of travel versus a family who is in a different socioeconomic educational standpoint, have different needs and wants and desires. And the data that Mission Insights provides about all of these different categories is actually pretty fascinating and gives a real look deep into the community around you. The process for Mission Insight is actually quite simple. You can just go to their website and you input your information, especially where you're located, and you order the instrument for your community. There is a way for a governing body to take a presbytery to take a contract with Mission Insight, which will then generate reports for every congregation in its bounds. The challenge with that then is that somebody needs to be working with every single one of those congregations about how to use their report and how to deal with this mountain of data that they will get about their community. And if you can imagine any of our presbyteries, it would be very challenging to do that. Individual, one by one, congregations that are doing other assessments is my personal preference with Mission Insight. And then you have somebody who can sit with you and go through the report and think about these different groups. I found Mission Insight to be a great generator for conversations about the community. There's lots of surprises for every congregation in something like Mission Insight, and lots and lots of learnings. Here in the presbytery I serve, we've had a couple congregations do Mission Insight this past year, and they've learned quite a bit about their communities. This is their website. They have a sample report that you can go to, and they also have a video you can watch that gives some samples about a congregation that did Mission Insight, so you can see what is generated. And again, the product is this comprehensive data-driven report about the community beyond your walls, and it can give clarity about what to do and what not to do in your community, help you make decisions about resources to bring to address any gaps that you might have, and also future projections can be very helpful for congregations at any life stage, but especially when they're engaging in a search. There's a great video that we show here in this presbytery called Calling the Pastor You Need, Not the Pastor You Want. And this is about looking out at those 5 to 10 year trends in your community, and as you do a search, thinking about who you might want to call, who will be best equipped to address those trends. These can also be very useful for a new worshiping community and for missional starts. And then the other is another quick assessment. This is the financial assessment. This is a free assessment that's offered through the Presbyterian Foundation. It can be taken at any time. It's just a simple input of data that you already have about yourself, giving data, the kinds of things that would be in your annual clerk's report. This is stuff you already have, but you put it into their online calculator, and at the end it generates a report immediately for you about the state of your congregation's financial wellness and what steps you might want to take. This is extremely simple and really, really helpful. This is the link on the Foundation's website. It's on their resources tab in their website, and it can be used at any time to help resource a congregation. I know there's some questions that are coming in. We're going to definitely address those at the end. The last thing I'd like to talk about is a case study. We in Albany Presbytery have been engaged in a 3-year process of discernment about our presbytery and our future and ways that we want to be resourcing for future ministry. So we have developed out of all of that a new ministry plan for the presbytery. We have 2 pieces to it. One is large-scale competencies that we want for the entire presbytery. So we have selected a couple competencies that we feel everyone needs currently in the presbytery for ministry, and we have said that we will review these competencies every 2 years. These competencies will drive large-scale resourcing from the presbytery, things on our website that we might put out for congregations, and also our educational all-presbytery meetings that will happen twice a year. And then we have a ministry plan for congregations. And what this is basically taking a look at our former triennial visits process and finding ways to hone and make it new. And so what we have done is provided a toolbox of resources for congregations, much in the way that I have here. We are requiring that the Congregational Assessment Tool is done at the front end for all interims. And we have also developed a building assessment process internally for our congregations. We have a Google form on our website that you can see where congregations can input information about their buildings. The next step for us is to fill out and to train some teams on assisting congregations with building needs, and also congregations on congregational renewal. And we also are engaging much more coaches for individual ministry leaders, and also coaches for leadership teams, and also bringing in some consultants to work with congregations or work with teams of congregations. So what we've done is we're blending a lot of these pieces together. So I'd like now for us to unmute and answer some questions. I know that one of the questions that came in was about cost for all of these. The New Beginnings cost is in flux a little bit right now because we have a new network in the Synod, and we're in the process of negotiating what the cost will be per congregation. It will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,000, but don't quote me on that. Holy Cow, if you go to their website, you will see that they have costs that are based on congregational size. It begins at $415, and then it moves up to closer to $1,000 for larger congregations for their instrument. That is only part of the cost for the CAT. There is a second piece of cost for the assessor to work with you to provide the interpretation of the CAT. There would be no point in taking it without having that 3-hour interpretation. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and then next steps afterwards. The cost for the interpretation can range from $500 or so up to $1,000, depending on if there is an interpreter near to you and how much travel time is needed. Holy Cow also provides an opportunity to do that interpretation online with one of their staff in Ohio. That is by webinar format, essentially, just like this. Mission Insights, the basic report is about $95 for a congregation, and then there's a more detailed report. It's around $250. And again, if your governing body buys a contract for the entire presbytery, then the presbytery is paying for it and the cost is nothing. But we have not yet had any presbyteries do that in our synod. And the financial health and wellness calculator on the Board of Pensions site is free. I will say one of the things we do here in Albany is that we have some funds set aside in our Committee on Ministry budget for congregational transformation, and so we do work with congregations to help them with the cost of some of these instruments, not all of it, but a portion. And this past year, when we did some building assessments, we set aside funds to have an actual building inspector, certified contractor, come and do assessments on about 1/3 of our churches. So those are some funds we intentionally set aside in our presbytery to help with the cost of some of these instruments. So that's a conversation in each presbytery, what funds are available, and if there are funds that can be applied for. So Kim, I'll take any other questions.
Yes, so I have no other questions at this moment other than what just came in. I just sent a message to everyone saying you can either send in your questions via your question window. I know some people don't have microphone. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you. I could probably unmute everyone if you want, Shannon. There's probably enough people, unless people are concerned about their own noise in their own area, then they could mute themselves. If that would be helpful, I could unmute everybody. Would you like me to do that?
Sure. And then whatever questions emerge, we can take them, and then I do have information for next steps after the webinar.
Okay, great. So let me just give me a second here to see if this button unmutes everyone. It might mute you and I. So let's do that, and I'll be right. Just give me 2 seconds here. Hold on. Okay, so I need to just do it manually. So just give me a break. Or a minute here. I'm unmuting people. They might see that they are unmuted as I'm unmuting them. Okay, that person doesn't have. It looks like I've unmuted everybody who can be unmuted. Oh. So if there are any other questions, you can attempt to work on it now. It looks like there's 3 people that I can't unmute. Okay. And we can hear people and your background noise. So obviously, if you don't have anything to say, if you could just mute yourself, that'd be great.
Do we have any other questions?
This is Pete Vischer from Northern New York. Do you have a rough time frame when you think the Synod will be going out more fully with the New Beginnings program?
Yes. So the New Beginnings, there's about 5 or 6 people throughout the Synod that met 2 weeks ago at Stony Point Center with one of the staff from New Beginnings. He came out to us. He's based in Louisville. He's actually one of our former staff from the Presbytery Mission Agency, and when our office in Louisville closed out the program on our end, the disciples hired him. So he went from working for the Presbyterian Church to the Disciples of Christ. So we met with Michael 2 weeks ago, and it looks like we have one test congregation in New Jersey that is interested, so we may test 2 or 3 other congregations in that presbytery with that one as a cluster. That's the most effective way of doing it, because then your leadership teams in your congregations, when you get those reports back, can meet with other leaders from other congregations that are also getting their reports back, and there's more and better opportunity for cross-pollination of leaders around different congregations. So it looks like that test will be run late summer, early fall, and then in 2018 we will start with setting up some of these come and see events and putting it out more widely in the Synod. So we're about 6 months away from a fuller launch Synod-wide.
Thank you.
Sure.
Since no one else is asking a question, on the CAT, one of the options you mentioned was to do a webinar as opposed to bringing someone to your location to do the 3-hour assessment.
Correct.
Is there a reduced cost if you do it that way?
It's actually, so we have a trained assessor. We have actually 2. I am one of them in the bounds of Albany Presbytery. And the charge that the agency here charges is $585 for an in-person assessment, plus cost of travel, which is usually local mileage. I looked at Holy Cow's website yesterday. It looks like they charge, I think it was $1,000 for one of their people to come out, and then I think it was a little bit less for them to have an assessor. So it seems a bit cost neutral from as I look at it. I've never done their online webinar one, so I don't have much to say about it. I've not seen it in practice. I've just seen it with a live person. I will say that from watching and doing some of these live assessments that it's nice because you get to see how people engage with it as they receive the data about themselves and what patterns are emerging there, and then spend some time talking with leaders and doing some debriefing afterwards. So it sometimes allows for a little bit more back and forth. But again, I think a lot of congregations, I mean, I know where you are up in northern New York, you all heavily use online technology because of the spread out nature of your presbytery geographically, which has been a real tool and a blessing for all of you. So this may really work well because there's already a lot of congregations that are used to that or groups. We also sometimes here in Albany for assessments of congregations have, and I forgot to say this at the beginning and you're reminding me of it, is that when the interpretation happens, we also try to have our committee on ministry liaison attend the interpretation, and our liaisons are not part of those congregations, but so usually because we're helping pay for some of it, so that everyone is looped in on what is needed afterwards and what recommendations and resourcing needs come out of it. So we try to, as much as possible, have our committee on ministry liaison attend. But if you did it online, that would be also very simple to do. You would just give them that login.
Right.
So, any other questions out there? And that's okay if we don't have any more questions. We're going to give you information about how to continue to follow up with our network and with all of us. And I also know that this is being recorded because I know some of the committees on ministry in our networks are planning to provide this as a resource for their committees on ministries as well, which is why we're going to begin putting together this sort of library of these webinars. So any other questions before we close out?
I hate to monopolize this, but in your experience, comparing New Beginnings and the CAT, does anyone seem to fit better with the smaller, more rural type congregations?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I will say they give you a different product at the end, and it's not that one is better than the other, they're just very different. So New Beginnings is a product which encompasses a real look at your facilities and your building and how much you use it day by day and for what kinds of groups and your finances and what the congregation says about itself, all packaged together, and develops this sort of product on the back end where you have these small group conversations.
Right.
That's one type of a product. The CAT, on the other hand, gives you information about all of those things, but it's packaged very differently, and the benchmarking with other congregations really helps you see not so much from a judgmental point of view of where you stack up, but from an information point of view. And it also has, I think, the opportunity to be a little bit more honest because the data is built in and is robust in a way that New Beginnings is a little bit more broad in a way that the CAT isn't. So they're just different kinds of instruments, and they give you different kinds of products. So it's really about what works. Now, New Beginnings does have, the CAT does have a product for congregations that are smaller, which is just called Conversations, which is a smaller version of the Congregational Assessment Tool, and it's about half the cost, and that's based on congregational size. You can see all of that on their website of what they recommend for each, where the size breaks happen, and that can be very useful for smaller congregations.
Thank you.
So Shannon, there was one comment that was made by Janice, and I think we do have it covered, but just to reinforce, she says it would be helpful for you to post a link to the recorded podcast for those of us not currently serving on COM. I'd like to share this with my interim pastor colleagues, and well, I'll let you answer that. Go ahead.
Yes. So it sounds like we're done with questions, so let me explain what happens next. This is being recorded, and so once the webinar is completed, when we all sign off in a few minutes, it will be uploaded to the Synod's YouTube channel, and that will take place later this week. And we will we have all of your email addresses and contact information from when you registered, so we will send you out a follow-up email later this week and with the information and the link to that. We will also place the link on the Northern New York's Google group, and anyone can join, or Facebook group, sorry, and anyone can join that. That is listed here. David Bennett, who's the resource presbyter for Northern New York Presbytery, is the point of contact for this network. And then there's also a link here for our network and descriptors of all the networks on the Synod website. So that will be our next step. So yes, Janice, it will be recorded, and it will be a resource which will hang out on the Synod's YouTube channel for as long as the Synod has a YouTube channel, which, you know, I don't think they're discontinuing that anytime soon. So it will be there, and you will be able to use it, and it'll be on demand, and it will be free for your use. And I understand there's one other question which has come in.
Yes, so this is from Donald Haight. He was really great. He signed on early, tested his chatting, but it looks like his mic isn't working. So he sent in his question via the chat window here, and he says, I have a question about New Beginnings. It looks like an assessment covers facilities, finances, and a tour of the community. Does it assess the goals of the church or the desires of the church members?
Yes. So those pieces come out in the interviews that happen when the assessor is there. They do spend time talking with the leadership of the congregation, be that whatever leadership body the congregation has, and then also pastoral leadership, hearing about all of the congregation's current goals and what they're doing, and then all of those pieces are pulled together in that assessor's report and reflected on based on all of the other pieces of data, and then becomes part of the training that happens between the assessor and leaders of those home conversations, where the assessment report is presented in small house meetings, and feedback is generated and given, and then the final report. So the report really comes in two stages. There's that first preliminary report, the house meetings, and then there's honing that happens after that.
Okay, Shannon, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Great. Well, it sounds like we're done for today. This has been great, and I'm glad that we were able to get this content out there, especially within our network, but beyond it, that we were unable to do because of unforeseen circumstances at our retreat last month. And if there are follow-up needs and issues, this is the information on the screen here and how to contact us. And as I said, you will be getting a follow-up email, and that will include this information that you see on the screen in front of you, and it will also include the link to the YouTube video, which is of this entire webinar and its recording. And I want to say a thank you to Kim Deal. Kim is on staff of Albany Presbytery. She works on our communications, and she was willing to hop over and work with the network on this webinar to make sure it ran as smoothly as it did, to make sure everyone had what they needed, and to take care of making sure it looks great once it hits YouTube. So I just want to say a word of thank you to Kim for pulling this off as seamlessly as she always does. And thank you to all of you for participating.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will send these resources all out to you very soon. Have a great day.